I'll call this August 28, 2014 committee meeting of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to order. My name is Jeff Griggs and I am chairman of the commission. At this time, I'd like to ask everybody with a cell phone, if you would, to turn it to mute or vibrate. Hold on, time out. Bill Cox. We have a quorum. We'll start without Bill. Before I was so rudely interrupted there.
He's with Hayes.
At this time, I'd like to ask everybody, Ms. Barber, would you please sit down, please? Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask everybody with a cell phone, if you would, to turn it to mute or vibrate. If you do get a phone call, I'd ask that you'd wait till you get out in the lobby to take that call. Also, there's a tablet that'll be passed around the room. I ask that you sign it today, where we'll have a record of your presence here today. If you're representing a group, I'd ask that you write the name of that group out beside your name. Ms. Hayes, you already have my attention, so won't you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Chad Baker. Here. Jim Bledsoe. Here. Harold Cannon. Here. Bill Cox. Here. Jeff Griggs. Here. Connie King. Here. Jeff McMillan. Here. Tom Rice. Here. Jim Ripley. Here. James Stroud. Here. Trey Teague. Here. David Watson. Here. Jamie Woodson. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize a few guests that we have in the room. We are honored today to have State Representative Jim Eldridge. He's from Jackson. Thank you, Ms. Jimmy. We appreciate your support too, really do. Also in the room, we have Mr. Board Barker, that's Deputy Commissioner of Agriculture. Mr. Board, we're glad to have you here today, sir. At this time, I'd like to ask Director Carter if we have any announcements. Any on the commission, or any announcements? Okay, if not, I'm sure there's some of you in the audience that may be your first time to commission meeting, and I'd like to briefly go over a few guidelines the way we do our meetings. Today is committee day, and votes taken in committee are non-binding, and what that means is it's just the recommendations for the full commission, which will meet tomorrow. Anyone in the room that would like to address the commission today on a particular subject matter, I'd ask that you would wait till that item comes up in committee. For example, if you're here to talk about duck hunting, which I'm sure a few of you are, wait till that comes up in the Wildlife Committee. And if you want to speak, raise your hand, and the chairman of the Wildlife Committee will recognize you. And once you are recognized by her, come to the microphone, state your name. If you're representing a group, please mention the name of that group. Also, I would ask that you would courteously that you would not turn around and talk to anybody in the audience if a discussion starts. Also, I'd ask that you would direct your questions and comments to the chairman of that committee and not to the agency personnel unless the chairman gives you permission to. I, along also with the chairman of each committee, reserves the rights to limit comments and discussions, especially in cases of repetition. I'd ask that you keep your comments short and as relevant as you can. At this time, if we don't have anything else, I am going to turn the meeting over to Wildlife Committee Chairman Jamie Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, we'll go straight to Chief Radajak with the 2014 elk tag drawing.
Thank you, Chairman Woodson and the rest of the commission. It gives me great honor and privilege to present to the commission and to the world the 2014 North Cumberland Elk Hunt winners. As most of you know, it's a very coveted hunt. There are only 6 individuals each year that are chosen to hunt free-ranging elk in the state of Tennessee, and I'm about to announce this year's winners. Before I get to that, what I'd like to do first is start with the elk conservation tag. This is a tag that the director has the authority to give to an NGO, conservation-minded NGO, where they will take that tag and put it up for auction or other means to raise monies for the TWRA's elk program. And this year, the elk conservation tag went to the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Foundation. They've been the beneficiary for a number of years. And what the foundation does with this tag is they put it up for auction on eBay. And they did it again this year in the month of July. And I am happy to report the winning bid goes to a Shane Alexander. And that tag raised almost $10,000. It actually surpassed last year's bid of just over $8,000. Mr. Alexander is a current resident of Montana, although he lived in Tennessee for quite some time. So he knows what a privilege it is to hunt elk in Tennessee, and he was the winning bid for our elk auction. So congratulations to Mr. Alexander. That leaves the other 5 tags that go into an elk drawing for us to select the winners of the 2014 elk hunt. Give you a little bit of background information on that. If you look at the number of applications that we received for the elk drawing this year, you can see we're very close to 10,000, is a slight drop from the previous year. As you can see, 93%, almost 1 out of 20, are non-sportsman license holders, and those non-sportsman's license holders have to pay a $10 non-refundable fee, but you can see that the vast majority of our sportsmen take advantage of the sportsman's license that we do sell. Looking at those numbers, thinking they're static and around 10,000, I must say that we are very pleased with that number as it stands right now. If you recall, a few years ago, we were topping out somewhere around 6,000 applicants each year, and what we did is we made a slight change to the timing of our drawing and had it coincide with our big game deer and turkey WMA draw. And that just puts the elk hunt in front of so many more eyes. And it actually increased our participation in that elk drawing by almost 70%, and we're still hovering at that number. So having said that, I'm going to get to the winners of the 2014 elk drawing, and I hope this works because every time I tried it, it worked differently. Setting the stage. If I might add, I must remind Chairman Woodson, those are elk and not coyotes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
This year's 2014 elk tag winners are Clay Oldham from Hartsville, Tennessee, Audie Lee Scrimshire from Maryville, Larry R. Dunn from Baxter, and Jimmy Dean Rogers from Jefferson City. Those are the 4 winners of the 5-day elk hunt in North Cumberland in October. And our youth tag this year goes to Robert L. Goodner of Cleveland, Tennessee. He's a 14-year-old. He's actually the first boy drawn on the youth hunt. So. And with that, we will begin the process of notifying these individuals and hopefully setting them up for the hunt of a lifetime.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chief. And are there any questions about the elk tag winners?
I have one.
Commissioner?
Do we send out emails to our list that we have to ask for applicants for the elk hunt?
Most of the advertisement that takes place for the elk hunt is through the normal means, whether or not it is the website. The fact that we had it coincide with the WMA drawing really put it in front of more people's eyes. But as far as I know, we do not do any specialized mailings for the elk hunt.
That hasn't been one of the items so far.
Okay, great, excellent. Chief, if you would, we'll go forward to Proclamation 1409, amendment to Proclamation 0802 on the North Cumberland WMA.
I do not have a slide to show you, but all the commissioners should have that proclamation in their packet. And literally what Proclamation 14-09 proposes is to add just over 43,000 acres to North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area.
Great. Are there any questions? Then for the members of the Wildlife Committee, do I have a motion to approve Proclamation 1409, Amendment to Proclamation 0802?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Is a second? Any discussion? Any discussion from members of the public? With that, all members in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. You adopt. Next item, thank you, Chief, is Joe Benedict. If you would come, please, and we'll discuss Proclamation 1411 on migratory bird hunting seasons and regulations. And just proceed when ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, folks. It's good to be here in West Tennessee, which, as we all know, is the ducky part of the state. It's kind of appropriate that we're going to do our Waterfowl Proclamation here. Want to talk to you a little bit today about the waterfowl harvest estimates that were generated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service from last season. Talk briefly about the wetland conditions for breeding ducks this year, as well as the breeding duck population estimates, and then finally go into the proclamation itself, 14-11. Before I start, I want to share a new feature that we're proud to be putting in the 2014-15 Waterfowl Hunting Guide. It's a QR code. You're seeing these things nearly everywhere now. We thought we'd put one in the Waterfowl Hunting Guide, and this is the approximate location you can see there. And what it will do is, if you have a smartphone, you could scan the QR code, and it will store a PDF, in this case, the sort of the centerpiece of the hunting guide, in your phone for access later on. So if you forget your hunting guide and you're out hunting, of course, you're not going to forget your cell phone. So you can pull this up, and it'll store this PDF that includes the waterfowl season dates and bag limits. So hunters will have that easy access to that this year. So we'll get right into the 2013-14, last year's waterfowl hunting estimates, harvest estimates. Last year, Tennessee hunters harvested about 220,000 ducks, which is about average and about identical to last year. I know we don't have average duck hunters in Tennessee, but the average Tennessee hunter, based on these statistics, took about 9 hunting trips last year and harvested 2.7 ducks per day for an average of about 24 ducks per season. Now, both of those averages, the daily harvest and the average seasonal harvest, were above the long-term average. And in fact, it puts Tennessee in one of the top 4 Mississippi flyway states for duck harvest. So I'm proud to report that. The average Tennessee goose hunter took about 10 trips last year and harvested 3 geese for an average of about 0.3 goose per day. Also, a total of 350 Sandhill cranes were harvested last year out of the allocated 1,200 birds or permits that we provided. And then I just want to provide a note here about Kentucky's season. They were in their 3rd year of crane hunting last year. They harvested 85 birds out of 800 permits allocated. And this year, next year actually, they'll be requesting the Fish and Wildlife Service allow them to move that crane season to an operational season. We expect that to be passed by the service. Continuing with our harvest estimates from last year, the early September wood duck and teal season, Tennessee hunters harvested 8,364 wood ducks last year, and no blueing teal during that 5-day September season. Now, you see the asterisk there. This harvest estimate of 0 is likely due to a sampling error, and of course not a real harvest of 0. The average harvest of bluing teal in that September 5-day season is about 2,000 to 3,000 birds. This sampling error is likely, we have a small number, relatively speaking, a small number of hunters that participate in those seasons, and the Fish and Wildlife Service samples those hunters, obviously in a small proportion. And so it could be that the folks that receive those surveys or those parts collection packages either moved, didn't hunt in that year, and so they weren't surveyed. So this number may be changed next year. I'm not sure if the service will have a correction for that. But again, the estimate that we know, the average is about 2,000 to 3,000 birds. The commission passed, excuse me, previously a proclamation allowing the continuation of the 5-day wood duck and teal season. The dates are up there. You'll see September 13 through 17. And also at a special called commission meeting, I believe it was August 1st, you folks made the recommendation to allow the daily bag limit for that early season to increase from 4 birds to 6. So hunters this year in September will be able to take 6 birds during that 5-day wood duck and teal season, only 2 of which can be wood ducks, of course. And we're very proud to announce that there's also 4 additional teal-only days that will immediately follow the 5-day wood duck and teal season. Again, with a bag limit of 6 birds, only teal, any teal species. So jumping up north here, the Fish and Wildlife Service breeding ground wetland condition, what we call the May pond count. This year was the May ponds that they counted, there were 7.2 million ponds that had water in them. That's really what that means. This number is similar to last year and 40% above the long-term average. So that's really good. We had wet prairies, and we all know what wet prairies do for ducks. Here's a graph essentially of the same data, but it goes back from 1960. I'll use my mouse here instead of pointing this laser at this gentleman here. Going from 1960 through 2014 there, and I apologize for the width of those slides or those lines. I got this figure from the Fish and Wildlife Service, and I can't adjust it at all, but essentially the top line there is the total May ponds throughout time, and you'll see we're way up here above, getting close to some of these highest peaks. This is Prairie Canada, the next highest line, which is Saskatchewan, Manitoba, those areas, and then the north central U.S., the Dakotas here is the last line. So things are looking good for ducks this year. This is an outdated slide, and I just included here simply to show where Tennessee gets its ducks from. These are the number of, the size of these lines represents the number of birds that were harvested in Tennessee that were banded that came from those different areas. And so you'll see the big red line, which you may not be able to read that, but that's Saskatchewan, where we have 27% of our ducks come from Saskatchewan and about 19% from Manitoba. So again, the prairie potholes essentially are the bread and butter for where we get our ducks in Tennessee. This is a slightly different representation, again, of the breeding habitat conditions. You'll see, again, in this green area here, the prairies, green is good habitat and the blue is excellent habitat. So again, it's setting us up for my next slide, which will talk about the breeding population of birds themselves. The total breeding duck population this year was estimated at 49.26 million ducks, and that's a record high number since 1955. That's a lot of ducks. It's an 8% increase from last year and 43% above the long-term average. And just one species to note, mallards there, 10.9 million mallards were estimated in those counts this year. And again, 42% above long-term average. So again, this is a slide that the service provides us showing the total number of ducks through time. And you'll see we're at the far right of that graph and we're above any other point on there. And this graph began in 1955. So we're at an all-time high for waterfowl populations. And again, just to show the mallard breeding population as well. It's not as high as it's ever been, but it's getting close. Okay, moving to the
Joe,
eastern
Joe, may I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
On I know that we've just seen data on the breeding, but do you have any data in terms of like timing of migration through Tennessee in different parts of the state, early, late season, if there are more ducks in any period? I know anecdotally what I would think about it, but do you have data on that?
I don't have any data. There's an interesting, there's a professor at Long Point Waterfowl that's working on a winter severity index that uses some climate data to predict when ducks will migrate. There's still a fair number of holes in that data, and I've not seen anything to be state specific yet. So
Okay.
the short answer is no, I don't have anything on that.
So in terms of predictions, I can imagine how that would, but what about in terms of past seasons, predictability for early or late flying migration?
As you know, I've only been here since January, and I don't have a good sense for that yet.
Okay.
But I'm not aware of any data that we have, like surveys on refuges and those kind of things. I'm not aware of any data like that.
Excellent.
I'll be
Thank you.
looking into that, though.
It would be interesting if there is some over time. Thank you.
Are you wanting them to tell you the right day to go hunt?
Well, yeah. Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any other questions on ducks? Great. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so moving to the eastern population of Sandhill cranes. As folks are aware, we held our first crane season last year. Just wanted to show you this graph. The green hash mark in the northern area there around the Great Lakes is the primary breeding range of the eastern population of sandhill cranes. The blue hash mark is the migration corridor, more or less, and you'll see that Tennessee, pretty much all the cranes that migrate south, almost all of them will come through Tennessee at some point. And then, of course, they split the population going to the eastern part of the U.S. and then the rest of Louisiana. Cranes are sort of indexed in a slightly different way than waterfowl. There's a fall survey in some primary migratory areas that the Fish and Wildlife Service uses to index them. The 2013 fall sandhill crane index for the eastern population was 64,322. This is nearly a 350% increase in the population since the first survey was initiated in 1979. And the most recent 3-year average is 74,784, again, the highest on record. So in keeping with my trend of showing you trend data from the Fish and Wildlife Service, here's a graph that shows the eastern population index for sandhill cranes. The dots on the graph are annual indexes or indices, and the line is a 3-year running average. So you'll note that the 3-year running average is the highest it's been, even though this year the count was slightly lower than last year. So cranes are doing well. So we'll now jump right into Proclamation 1411, the Migratory Bird Hunting Regulations for the 2014-15 late season. This proclamation includes season dates and bag and possession limits for ducks, geese, the youth waterfowl hunting days, sandhill cranes, gallinules, and rails. And as we mentioned, the prairies were wet and the duck populations responded well, and therefore the federal frameworks call for a liberal package, which is a 6-duck, 60-day season. So all the recommendations from here on out are similar to last year with calendar date corrections and one change to the daily bag limit. So the daily bag limit of ducks is 6 per day and may include no more than the following: 4 mallards, only 2 of which can be females, 3 wood ducks. Again, the 3 wood ducks is for the late season only, not the September season where the bag limit is 2. 3 scaup, 2 redheads, 2 pintails, 1 black duck, and the change for this year is 1 canvasback. Last year, the canvasback population was a little bit higher, and we had 2 per day. So this year, canvasbacks are at 1 a day. And of course, we have a separate 5 merganser bag limit, only 2 of which can be hooded. We recommend adoption of these bag limits. Just a quick refresher, we have 2 hunting zones in Tennessee, and this is a representation of those 2 zones. The only difference would be for Canada goose season. So we have the reelfoot zone up there in the far left corner, little red spot there, all the waters within the reelfoot WMA, and then the rest of the season, or the rest of the state rather, which we call the statewide zone. So this is a little bit of a detailed graph figure. Let's start at the bottom. This is a snapshot of the draft hunting regulations. And so this is what will appear, or a slight change version of this perhaps, in the hunting guide. So the very bottom row there is the youth waterfowl hunting season days. I'll just note that both reelfoot and statewide are the same. January 31st and February 7th, 2015, those are the 2 Saturdays immediately following the last day of the regular waterfowl season, regular duck season. And so, so those are the same. Going to the middle 2 lines there, the gallinules, moorhens, rails, and soras, the thing to keep in mind there is that those dates exactly mirror the statewide and the reelfoot duck zone dates for the duck season. So you can almost ignore those a little bit. Those are placed there because there's not a lot of hunters that go out and target those, but they can be taken incidental to duck hunting. So if we go to the top line, go to the far right, we'll look at reelfoot duck zones first. We have the November 15th, 16th opening weekend there at reelfoot, and that's to capture early migrating birds such as gadwall, shovelers, and probably a few pintails. And then the rest of the season there, the far right, is November 29th, which is a Saturday following Thanksgiving, through January 25th. And January 25th is the last Sunday in January, and that is the last day that the feds allow us to have hunting season end on. So we're going as late as we possibly can. And so here's the cell that everyone's been waiting for, the statewide duck zone. The recommendation from the division is to start on Thanksgiving Day, November 27th, and go 60 days straight through the end of January, the 25th. And so now what I wanted to do is provide a little bit of the rationale for the reason for our recommendation for the statewide duck season there. So in 2013, we put a news release out, posted it on the website, that once we realized that Thanksgiving was late last year. When Thanksgiving was late, it affects the duck season dates, as we know. So we had a web poll that was open from June 24th to August 15th of last year. And there's a postcard here that you see that we handed out at the duck blind drawings, basically asking folks to go to that website and take that survey, if you will. The question, we had 3 questions on there. Please give us your TWRA ID number. We didn't want folks to vote more than once, if you will. And then we said, are you primarily a deer hunter or a duck hunter? We wanted to get a feel for what duck hunters wanted. And then finally, we had the question, which of these 3 dates do you prefer? And I apologize, you can't read them very well, but essentially it's 2 Saturdays before Thanksgiving, the top line there, November 16th last year, the Saturday before Thanksgiving, which last year was November 23rd, and also the opening of the deer gun season, or Thanksgiving Day, Thursday. So last year, we received 2,051 entries on that web poll. 310 preferred 2 Saturdays before Thanksgiving. 573 folks wanted to hunt the season to open the Saturday before Thanksgiving, and 1,138 wanted Thanksgiving Day, and so that's about 57%. So we, as you know, we recommended, and you folks passed last year, a Thanksgiving Day opener. Again, a quote-unquote late in straight season, 60 days. And just a final note there, 87% of the folks that took the survey identified themselves as primarily duck hunters. So fast forward to this year, again, the calendar date has Thanksgiving late. It's a pretty rare occurrence, I think, to have 2 Thanksgivings late in a row. So my question to the division staff was, well, what feedback did we get last year right after Thanksgiving or right before Thanksgiving? Because, we did the survey in the summertime. Folks aren't thinking about ducks, perhaps. And sometimes folks just kind of lose track of things. And so did folks start calling the office and say, you guys got this really wrong? And the answer was no. We got almost no feedback last year with the Thanksgiving opener. During the annual season setting process for all of our hunting regulations from January through March, I didn't receive any comments regarding the opening day of duck season during that process. This year we had some spring flooding. Some of the crops on our wildlife management areas were put in late. We want to give those time to mature. And there's also likely conflicts between deer and duck hunters when you have the same opening day. I did a quick count last night. Out of the 116 wildlife management areas in the hunting guide, I conservatively estimated that about 19 of those could have deer and duck conflicts, where you'd have a deer hunter in a tree by a pond and a duck hunter there. So based on those factors, our recommendation is to open on Thanksgiving this year. We did have some recent input, probably in about the last 2 months. We've had some phone calls, quite a few emails, and in fact, one letter I believe that you all got directly from the mayor of Dyersburg that preferred that we open on the weekend before Thanksgiving and have a split season. There's also a thread on TN Ducks that basically was trying to rally the troops to, again, go to the weekend before Thanksgiving. So again, last night I just did a quick count based on this very small sample size. 18 preferred a split and 12 preferred the Thanksgiving opener. So just want to let you folks know there's no biological issue with the timing of opening of the season. We're allowed to have 2 splits, or 2 phases rather, in a split. And wherever we put those 60 days is fine with the Fish and Wildlife Service. There'll be not too much difference as far as the harvest goes. But there certainly are social issues. Folks that are deer and duck hunters. Thanksgiving, of course, is a time of family, and there's conflicts with folks. Do I choose between family and hunting? And some folks will make the right choice, some will make the wrong choice. There is a manpower issue for law enforcement with those 2 major seasons in Tennessee opening on the same day. That'll be something that we would have to address internally. But those are the factors that we use when we consider making the recommendation to you today. So we realize it's going to be a difficult decision based on these social factors. So moving right along, these are the goose seasons. And again, it's just a little snippet of what the hunting guide will most likely look like. The top line there is snow geese, blue geese, and Ross geese. to open with the opening of duck season. In this case, based on our recommendation, it'd be November 27th and ending February 7th. February 7th is the second day of the youth hunting season. And if you'll notice the next column down, the next row rather, white-fronted geese has the same season. So again, the recommendation is to open it on the concurrent with duck season and end it with the youth season. Brant, we have a little bit longer season, so the recommendation is corrected for calendar dates the same as last year, November 23rd through January 31st. One thing to note, we got some feedback during the season setting process. We have a conservation season, you'll notice, for snow geese, because they're overabundant and they're destroying the habitat up in the prairie, in the tundra rather. So we have this conservation season where we're allowed to use unplugged shotguns and electronic calls. The thing to note here that what we're putting in the hunting guide that hasn't been in the past is that the daily bag limit of 20 applies during both the standard season and the conservation season. And the reason for that is the Fish and Wildlife Service has registration requirements for hunters if they're going to hunt in the conservation season, and survey requirements by state agencies if we wanted to go to a no daily bag limit and 30-minute shooting after sunrise, after sunset. So prior to my time here, we decided not to take those two conservation measures because of the burden of requiring hunters to register every year, and then for us to survey those folks at the end of the year. So again, just to note that the daily bag limit applies for snow geese during both the standard and the conservation season. Okay, this is the Canada Goose season recommendation. One thing to note is that the goose zones are slightly different than our duck zones. So you've got parts of or all of 5 counties there in the northwest part of the state. So in both seasons, they've just been adjusted for calendar dates compared to last year's season. If you look at the bottom line, in the statewide goose season, that's essentially the duck season dates, November 27th to January 25th. And on a real foot, it'd be the same, November 15th and 16th, and then the 29th through February 7th. Both zones have an additional days in October to try to harvest resident geese. So again, these are just corrected for calendar dates from last year. Finally, we have the Sandhill crane hunting season recommendation. Same thing as last year. We're not recommending any changes. Y'all will remember we're in year 2 of a 3-year experimental season that the Fish and Wildlife Service has allowed us to be in, and so the dates were adjusted for the calendar. Actually, we're getting one more day here, I believe. The approved hunt plan says we'll start with the early waterfowl season and go through January 1st. So last year was the 26th of November to January 1st. This year it'll be the 27th. So the recommendation is to do a handheld drawing for the same 400 permits, 400 permit packets this year. So that concludes.
Sure.
I have a question about the Sandhill. I know the permits for the experimental season, now we have to keep it for 3 years to get through this experimental. Is that the same with the dates?
The dates, the plan, the hunting plan that was approved by the Fish and Wildlife Service allows us to have a 60-day season. And I think the wording is concurrent with duck season. So we can have more days.
So if we change the dates to run with duck season, we wouldn't have to start the experimental season over as we would if we changed the number of permits.
That's correct.
Great. Thank you very much, Joe. First, if I might recognize former Commissioner Mike Hayes. We're glad to see you and glad to be in your part of the state. I really appreciate you being here. Any questions on Proclamation 1411 on the presentation?
Chairman Woods.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Number one, it's been said in our lifetime that there was a time where who thought we would be talking about the number of ducks that we're able to harvest now, the waterfowl, that things got very lean, very tight, and I think it's the work of this agency and your sister agencies and the public, Ducks Unlimited, Delta Waterfowl. There's a lot of people to thank for the fact that we get to do this hunting and we get to consider these limits today. Joe, I agree with you. I did not hear one word last year about opening on Thanksgiving, and I'm in East Tennessee, until after January. And then I caught it. And the questions came, why did you open Thanksgiving Day? And we said, what did you mean? He goes, it messes up the family, and we've seen the letters, and I won't go through that. But I shared with them, I didn't get one comment up until that time. This year it's been different. And there is an email factor that you have to kind of wade through when there's the mass emails. But I will say the lion's share, 98% of my constituents I would offer, have said they would prefer a split season, opening the weekend before Thanksgiving, closing after that Sunday, and then reopening the following weekend for the remainder of the season, the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Could you, and I may be putting you on the spot, could you share, if we wanted to consider that, what that would look like, and any concerns from the agency or law enforcement's perspective, please?
Do you mean looking at a calendar, or?
Just like, I know we would change, it would be proposed, if we consider this, to change ducks, coots, and mergansers, and I can't talk today.
Hold on a second. Would it be reflective of the slide that's on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
I prepared this slide, and I believe it's correct for such a scenario. And
Okay.
so this would, November 22nd and 23rd is the weekend before Thanksgiving. Essentially, we would move, I think what you're asking is, what would it look like if we moved the Thanksgiving Day and the Friday to the weekend before?
Yes, sir.
So these are the dates, November 22nd and 23rd, which is the weekend before. It would close down for 5 days and reopen in line with exactly what the reelfoot season is, a second phase, November 29th to January 25th. And it occurred to me just earlier this week that there's other subsequent changes that would have to be made. Just like we said, the Sandhill crane season, what the hunting plan says is we'll run it concurrent with waterfowl season. So the things underneath the other season changes list there, they're sort of housekeeping that would just be adjusted. In other words, the Canada goose season is typically run concurrent with the duck season. The snow goose, the white-fronted goose, the gallinose, moorhens, rails, and then the crane season. So this was mostly for me to remember, if you folks did make a change, that I need to go change those dates as well.
Okay. Concerns from agency or law enforcement, or comments related to that?
I guess the one comment that I made was that there's a conflict for law enforcement. Do they put their boots on and get in their boat, or do they go to the deer woods? And we have law enforcement folks here and the director. I'm not sure I could provide much more beyond that.
Ed, do you want?
Director Carter?
Thank you, Chairman. That was one of the factors that we looked at when we were trying to make our recommendation and which way to go. Was we knew that having 2 opening days would be a manpower issue in terms of just dividing people out. I'll just make a long story short is that we can rearrange personnel as we need to, and we'll make it work whichever way you go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Benedict, or Joe, has there ever been a season opener, just trying to understand the precedent, has there ever been a gun deer season opener and a duck season opener on the same day?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
Yeah, but you're young.
I'm not aware of one. I'm working strictly off of history here, but I don't remember one where they coincided.
And in terms of the survey data from last year, I know that the conversation revolved around trying to identify what the preference was for duck hunters, but has there ever been a question posed to both duck and deer hunters if there was a concurrent opening, if duck or deer hunters had support or opposition to that? Was that question ever posed?
Not that I'm aware of. And I see our chief shaking his head no as well.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Ripley?
Thank you. I do have concerns about not only the effects that we're having with regard to duck hunters, but with deer hunters. I guess, the sportsmen that are both are going to be confronted with a choice if we go with the split season that I think puts them in some difficulty. You know, are they gonna deer hunt? They're gonna duck hunt? What are they gonna do? And so for that reason, at this point at least, I would favor the season as it's been recommended by the agency. I'm also concerned about the law enforcement issues, and I heard the director mention that we can move resources. I've talked to some of the wildlife officers who say that they think that it would be really, really difficult for them to deal with both openers on the same day. Is Darren available to speak to this?
Chief Ryder?
Yes, Director Carter was correct. It's a matter of shifting personnel. You know, whatever y'all decide, with what limited manpower we do have, we'll focus on what we need to focus on. But it would be some difficulty pulling that county officer on what would be more than likely deer calls. But we have the ability, like Director Carter said, on the personnel, we have commission managers that can watch their management areas and focus on law enforcement that day. Because I think Joe said there's about 19 that do both, but the other ones are waterfowl areas. So if we put that focus on law enforcement with our managers and our non-mandatory commission personnel, we'll get the job done, if that helps you any.
And Chief, if I just might ask a clarifying question, I want to make sure I heard you right. I mean, your willingness to shift is by the will of the ultimate commission. I very much appreciate the flexibility, but I thought I heard you say that perhaps waterfowl would have less enforcement versus deer. Did I hear you right on that? And are there safety factors in the, I mean, you'll have to make decisions about manpower, which
Right.
makes sense.
The county officer is probably going to be inundated with mostly deer calls for that day. But what we have is a lot of commission managers that are managers on their waterfowl areas that they'll be hunting. So if their focus is on LE that day, we'll handle it. We'll cover it.
Okay. Additional questions from members of the committee or commission? I've got Commissioner Teague and Commissioner McMillan. Do y'all have a preference on who goes first? Go ahead. And Commissioner Cox. Commissioner McMillan, Commissioner Cox, and Commissioner Teague. You're recognized, sir.
I'm torn between it, but obviously I live like 600 yards from the Virginia line. And if I want to go duck hunting, and my friends and constituents that live up there, obviously they have to make a decision on driving 400 miles minimum to be able to hunt. So they give up Thanksgiving. And my comment was, do we have statistics on the divorce from last year, or mamas that don't love their kids anymore, their sons anymore? I mean, I can go either way because I don't want to go against the agency, but I understand why the East and Middle Tennessee people have to make that decision. You can go duck hunt and be back for Thanksgiving dinner if you're from West Tennessee. I just want to do what I feel like is right for the majority. Obviously, there's more duck hunters in West Tennessee, but there's a lot of folks that don't want to miss opening day, and they want to drive from East Tennessee and Middle Tennessee. And so that's where my thoughts are. I know a lot of states don't hunt Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day. And so, I guess we can't dictate. People have choices, but that's 2 days people are giving up if they're family oriented, that they don't hunt at all. So I just think we need to consider that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cox?
This has been faced one time before, several years ago, and to open on Thanksgiving, the commission did not want to do that. I successfully made the argument we did not want to open deer and duck together, so we made the third choice, which was the wrong choice, and opened on Friday, and got pounded for it because we lost 1 day, for heaven's sakes. I like opening on Thanksgiving less than I do opening the two together. I don't think the manpower issues are, it's the guys work hard anyway. They either work ducks or deer, either one. I think the Middle Tennessee guys and the East Tennessee guys who have invested and want to go duck hunting and get that opening in West Tennessee deserve the right to do that. And I don't see what anybody's giving up not having it on Thanksgiving. I think we ought to do the split season. Everybody gets to hunt you don't have to make the decision whether to skip Thanksgiving or not. So that's where I am.
Commissioner Teague?
I'd like to start by saying I'm obviously realize this situation, nothing seems ideal, and I wasn't really sure, so I just started calling people in the district that I represent and asking them what they thought. I realized my district is West Tennessee, but they were overwhelmingly in favor of a late and straight season, meaning starting on Thanksgiving. And I asked them their reasons for that, and they had several, and I'll just like to state those so their opinions are out. They said the quality of their hunting is better later in the year, which I think everybody would agree to. A lot of these people lease ground. The crops run later this year because of weather, and they're concerned with when they're going to be able to put boards, hold water to hunt. They also, some of the guys hunt public land, and they were concerned that if they did choose to deer hunt, what it was going to be like having an opening day in the deer woods on opening day of duck season. And I'd also like to ask somebody, like, what's our number of hunters, deer versus ducks?
Director Carter or Chief Radijak? As I'm recalling, it was about 1 million to 200,000.
It's approximately
Ratio.
220, 240,000 deer hunters and approximately 17,000 duck hunters.
So, I'm sorry, what was the first number, 200?
Could you repeat that, Chief? I want to we've got a couple of questions back here.
200,000 versus 14.
Approximately 220 to 240,000 deer hunters and approximately 17,000 duck hunters.
Any further questions about the number
still
of
got a
hunters?
few.
Well, it just.
Commissioner Teague is,
No.
I just want to make sure that we get back to
No, go ahead.
Commissioner Ripley?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
Commissioner
interrupt
Teague.
Commissioner Teague.
Director Carter.
Oh, excuse me. I just wanted to follow. I'm not sure we gave you enough information on the law enforcement side. We obviously are going to do whatever it takes to make it work on whatever you do. But just to answer your questions of those things you were asking about earlier, on opening day of deer season, a lot of our personnel, of course, are committed in enforcement. We also have a number of other people that are working check stations because that's the opening days when we collect a percentage of our data. We do it throughout the season, but so we'll have the check stations going, we'll have the WMAs, and then of course the private land. So what it would entail is rearranging personnel from Region 2 and Region 1, the further from Nashville west is where the greater conflict will be in terms of manpower, because that's where the greater deer hunting and duck hunting would be most prominent. So what we would do, we would take personnel where we could that would ordinarily be working a check station, probably pull in somebody who is not a commissioned person at all, but who has knowledge to work the check station. We'd take persons who ordinarily would not necessarily work enforcement that day, but have a commission that would be scheduled to do something else, and pull them into the enforcement ranks to augment those people. And where we could, we might pull people out of some of the regions where we have 2 officers in a county. We might move somebody a little bit farther west in order to augment that personnel. So what I'm saying is that we'll make it work whatever it is, but those are the dynamics that would be going on and trying to figure out who goes where and who would man check stations and those kind of things.
Thank you, Director. Commissioner Teague?
I just want to wrap up with a few personal thoughts. I'm a little worried about setting a precedent, setting seasons around social issues. I find it a little harder to swallow on the Thanksgiving as a reason not to have a season. I think it's a personal choice if you want to spend time with family or hunt. I personally take my family hunting with me, and
Where they want to go or not.
right, regardless. You got to build a nice blind, I guess. But you know, I think families we deal with this during turkey season, on Easter and Christmas, and there's a lot of things that come out of this, and I realize those aren't opening day. But anyway, I wanted to voice the opinion of the people I represent, and I would support the agency's recommendation.
Commissioner Ripley, did you have any other
Yes,
questions?
well, you know, I was looking at these numbers, 200,000 and some versus 17,000. They're all valued, whether they're duck hunters or deer hunters, they're all between deer hunters and duck hunters in WMAs and that sort of thing. The guy gets in there, he's up in the tree, he's been there since, whenever. And then the duck blind 200 yards away opens up. He's not gonna see any deer that way. So I worry about that. I worry about the quality of the deer hunting for those guys who have counted on having an opening day. Look forward to it all year. I know the duck hunters do too, but I can see that there could be conflict there. And I'd be interested to hear either Chief Radjack or someone who can speak to that situation. You know, are we gonna be sitting in a duck blind looking at a fellow wearing blaze orange in a tree, wondering are we gonna be sprinkling him with shot? So, I don't know, that concerns me.
Because we haven't experienced this within our agency yet, it's hard for us to predict what will happen, but that is a concern of ours, and Joe did his diligence and looked up how many WMAs potentially will have those conflicts, and there's about 20 of them that have the duck hunting and the deer hunting opportunities coincide. The thing with the deer hunters, there is a huge chunk of deer hunters within this state that I guess we could call them the weekend warriors, and they tend to just hunt a couple of days a year, and those few days tend to be the opening day, and it's tradition. They get together with their buddies and they go out the opening day. So opening days are truly important for a large faction of our hunters, and that's not just the deer hunters, but the duck hunters. And so I wish we could predict exactly what's going to happen, but because we've never faced this scenario before, we don't know what will happen.